When I was in elementary school, we planted a bean in a styrofoam cup. Anybody else do that? I'm not sure what we were learning. Probably something about plants. Anyway, Monday morning, I planted a bean in a white styrofoam cup, and I waited for it to grow. By Friday afternoon, I was frustrated because there were no signs of a bean sprout. So I decided to check on my seed. I dug down in the potting soil until I found the seed, had roots, sprouts sticking out, almost reached the surface. If I had just waited one more day, and my pitiful little bean plant didn't survive being uprooted, I never got a beautiful plant. I was a loser. I just had a cup of dirt and nothing to show for all my hard work because I wanted instant, overnight results. Since that day, my plant record with tracks is horrible. I've failed with flowers, trees, beans, vegetables, strawberries, you name it. Farming, gardening, or just trying to make something grow in a pot is not my thing. Mary Grace's office is like a greenhouse. She is a master gardener. There are plants everywhere. But I've learned I don't have to be good at gardening, planting, or caring for a lawn. I just have to know people who are good at it. If I've got the right friends, enough free food to get them to work in my yard, someone else can do it for me. That works with your yard. If you can afford it, you sweet talk a friend and marry someone with a green thumb or force your children into involuntary slave labor. You can have the best looking yard on the block without ever doing anything yourself. One person plants it, someone else waters it, or sets your sprinkler system. You can have a company put the right chemicals on at the right time. Someone else trims and prunes and plants weeds. You don't have to do anything but sit back, enjoy it, and take all the credit. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the American way. Wouldn't it be great if raising a family worked like that? You hire child-raising specialists, sit back, do absolutely nothing, and watch your perfect children grow into young doctors, lawyers, and millionaires who take care of you into your old age. No mess, no work, no diapers, no arguments, no struggles, no real effort, but great results. It doesn't work that way. You can't assign raising your children to someone else. You can't buy your way to a healthy, happy marriage. In fact, some of the most messed up marriages I've seen were wealthy people. You can give your kids everything and they'll still do wrong. In fact, giving them everything might actually cause it. Raising a healthy family, building a healthy marriage, maintaining healthy relationships takes time, effort, hard work, intentionality, love, help, and a lot of prayer. One of our core values as a church is we must build healthy families. We need strong marriages that stand the test of time. We want to help you raise children who love their parents and are lifelong followers of Jesus. It's not easy, it's not automatic, it's difficult, and it's challenging. Some of you have a hard time believing your family or marriage will ever be strong and healthy. Sounds good, but you're convinced there's no way it can ever happen. You're about ready to give up. Others of you were raised with a poor family example. Your parents fought. Someone had an affair. You may have grown up with angry, abusive parents. There were addiction issues. Maybe you never had a father in the home. There were husbands, but never a father. Maybe you had parents at home, but they weren't really present. They cared more about their jobs or friends or hobbies than they cared about you. Because you've never experienced or been part of a strong, healthy family, you naturally have some concerns. You wonder, how can I hope to have a healthy marriage if I've never seen a healthy marriage? How can I be anything but a horrible parent when that's all I've ever known? Well, I've got good news for you. You can break the cycle. and you can have a strong, healthy marriage and God-honoring family. You are not doomed to fail. Over the next few weeks, I want to unpack a biblical principle and show you how to set your family on the right path. If you're struggling in your marriage or family, I want you to listen and apply what you learn. If you're not struggling, these principles will help grow your family strong. If you don't have a family, but you want one someday, this is really important for you because you can start right and avoid a lot of our mistakes. If you don't have a family and you don't ever want a family, you still play a part because together we raise the next generation as part of the family of God. We all have responsibility. If you're 90 years old and you can just barely remember when you had kids, we still need you. We need you in the game and in the journey with us. Paul wrote in Galatians 6, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. The one who sows to please his sinful nature, from that nature will reap destruction. The one who sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. And then one of my favorite verses in Scripture, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. In Family Farm, we're going to study sowing and reaping and how it applies to your family. You'll learn specific things you can plant in your family and the harvest you can expect. I put some seeds in your bulletin this morning. Little red house that seeds. Plant them with your family and talk about the lessons we learned in this series. I'm going to plant mine. I'm going to do it this afternoon. And I'm going to post on social media as I go along. So see if you can grow better than me. I've got 10 gallons of Miracle Grow. And I've got some soil. And I'm going to grow better. Better flowers than you grow. That's my goal. So let's bring it on. Let's see what happens. I may not have a green thumb, but this is it. This is going to be my moment of planting success. Or I'm going to have another cup full of dirt. One of the two is going to happen. Now, I want to start with some general principles about planting. If you ask a farmer what he's planting, he knows exactly where he's planting corn, where he's planting rice, and where he's planting beans. He has a plan for when to start and knows when harvest time is. Imagine going out at planting time and asking the farmer, what are you planting? And the farmer says, I don't know. I went to the seed store and said, surprise me. Just give me a bunch of stuff, some seeds. I'll find out what it is when it comes up. There's nothing more fun than a surprise harvest. That's a foolish farmer who won't be one for long. Only a foolish farmer would plant without a plan. That's the first principle. Planting is not accidental. It's intentional. In your family, if you don't have a plan for what values, beliefs, traditions, and practices you're going to plant, you are like the foolish farmer waiting for a harvest surprise. In fact, if you don't have a planting plan, you're probably planting wrong things. Because the fact is, you're always planting something, whether you intend to or not. Heidi Jumper has a small planting box in her backyard. For several years, she tried to grow vegetables, and whatever she did failed. So instead of intentionally planting tomatoes or peppers or potatoes, she now has what she calls her surprise garden. After Heidi preps dinner, she throws the scraps in the surprise garden box. She doesn't water it. She doesn't fertilize it. She doesn't even know everything that goes into the surprise box. After throwing in the scraps, Heidi waits to see what will come up. Over the years, she's grown potatoes, a cucumber, a cantaloupe, onions, other random things. Right now, she has a 10-foot peach tree growing out of that box. And it was a complete surprise. Some of you parent like Heidi plants a garden. You randomly throw stuff in your family, hoping the right things will come up, but random stuff pops up because you just throw in scraps. You haven't watered, you haven't enriched their lives, you haven't protected them from things that threaten. Your family is a surprise because you haven't intentionally added anything. Well, a healthy marriage and a strong family doesn't happen by accident. It happens because you have a strategic plan. You intentionally plant good things so you will reap a good harvest. That's what we're going to work on this series. What to plant, how to plant it, how to help it grow. It is not too late to have a plan. Second principle, what you plant is what grows. If you plant beans, guess what grows? Yeah, beans. If you plant corn, yeah, you get corn. Whatever you plant grows. In the same way, whatever you plant in your family is what grows. If you plant generosity, then generous giving grows. If you plant bitterness, bitter resentment grows. If you plant faithfulness, faithfulness grows. If you plant unfaithfulness, that's what grows. If you plant anger, anger grows. If you plant criticism, you grow critics. For my whole life, my family went to church. My dad was always on the board, and he was song leader. He was adult Sunday school teacher. In all my years growing up, I never one time heard my parents say a negative thing about their pastor or about the church. Not once. And it was only years later I discovered there actually were some negative things. I just never knew them because my parents were very intentional, because they knew if they planted criticism, they'd go grow someone who's critical of leadership in the church. They planted right things, not wrong things. If you plant a love for missions, guess what grows? A love for missions, maybe even a missionary. What you plant is what grows. The seeds you plant in your children and grandchildren and family now determine what grows later. That leads to the next principle. This one's a little painful. This is tough, but everything you plant grows. The things you intentionally plant grow. The things you accidentally plant that you wish you wouldn't have planted, they also grow. Everything you plant grows. Some of you are grieved, not because you're planting ugly things, but because you're not the only person planting seeds in your kid's life. Maybe you share custody with a parent who's far from the Lord, or you have a grandchild whose parents don't follow Jesus. Maybe you're fostering kids who will only be with you for a short time. Don't get discouraged, get strategic. What you plant will grow. Purpose in your heart to outsow the negative influence in that child's life. The Lord has positioned you to make an incredible, even eternal difference. Make the most of the moments you have. Next principle, what you don't plant won't grow. You can't expect something to grow that you didn't plant. Imagine the farmer at harvest time going through the field with the combine from sun up to sun down, harvesting the crop. And when he finally comes in, you can tell he's ticked off. And so he asks, "What's wrong? What are you so mad about?" "I spent all day in the field, whole day. I didn't get one sunflower, not one. I looked. There were 0 sunflowers in that stupid field." "Well, how much sunflower did you plant?" "I didn't plant sunflowers, I planted corn. But I wanted sunflowers. I intended to plant sunflowers, I just didn't get around to it." That's a foolish, foolish farmer. What you don't plant won't grow. It always fascinates me. Can't count how many times I've had this same conversation. A family will be very sporadic in church attendance. I'll watch it for years. Mom and dad skip for any and everything. They might be here 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4 weeks. You know, if the weather's good, they're gone. If it's raining, they're gone. They've got every excuse. And then their kid enters student ministry. Middle school and high school bring a whole new set of temptations, wrong friends, challenging situations. And all of a sudden, mom and dad are worried because their kid doesn't place a high priority on church. So they come to me angry with our youth pastors. You need to fix that. Why doesn't my kid want to be in church every week? Why don't they want to come on Wednesday nights? Now, I try to be tender, but I have to be truthful. The reason they aren't faithful to church is because you didn't plant that in them. The reason they don't want to come Wednesday nights, because you never modeled that habit. You say, well, there's nothing for me on Wednesday nights. So? If you can't find something you like, come anyway because you're planting seed. You reap what you plant. If you never planted faithfulness, why would you expect faithfulness to grow? You're like the farmer, mad because he didn't get sunflowers when he planted corn. You can't sow seeds of one kind and expect a harvest of something else. Thinking about planting seed, wanting the results of good seed, even intending to plant the seed isn't enough. You have to actually plant the seed. I am very concerned for families who got out of the habit of attending church during the pandemic and now have other priorities. They're going to regret the harvest of new seeds they're planting. You reap what you sow. Don't blame someone else. Don't blame me. Don't blame the youth pastors. Don't blame someone else when you harvest what you planted. What you don't plant won't grow. Now, I want to look at it from the other direction. This is a powerful principle. Choose the desired harvest that determines the seed. If you want flowers, then plant flowers. If you want to harvest corn, plant corn. If you want sunflowers, plant sunflowers. Determine the harvest that decides what seed you plant. This is a powerful exercise for your family. Sit down with your spouse, your children, even your future spouse, and instead of looking through a short lens, what do we want right now? Look through a long lens. Ask these kind of questions. What do we want other people to see when they observe our marriage? When we reach our 25th anniversary, what things do we want to be present and valued? What are some things we want to see in our children spiritually? What kind of people do we want them to be? How do we want our children to treat others? How do we want them to react to those who are different? What do we want our children's priorities to be? How do we want them to handle money? What kind of givers do we want them to be? What core values do we want our children to develop and ultimately pass on to their children? Start at the end result, the harvest, determine what you want to harvest, and then figure out what to plant from that. Cindy and I are not perfect parents. We were not perfect parents. Far from it. Many of you walked that journey with us, and see, you got to firsthand witness some of our mistakes. When we had Tyler, we thought we were perfect parents. He was a perfect child. Everything was wonderful. You're ahead of me. Then came Parker. And he was a little more challenging to parent. He had a little more energy and a little more everything. I remember one day we were eating Sunday lunch, and Parker was making a bit of a mess, and he was pretty loud, and somebody came over, and they were telling me, well, you should. I said, I tell you what, you take him. You give it a shot, let me know how it turns out. So we made mistakes. We weren't perfect parents. And there were, for about, it was about 10 or 12 years, I wouldn't teach on parenting. Because I knew you were just going to heap abuse on me and on my children if I did. So I didn't want to expose them to that. But this part we got right. Early on, we decided several things we wanted for our boys. We wanted them to love church and love church people, not resent it like so many pastors' kids. And now, as adults, they do. They love you and they love the church. We wanted them to be tender-hearted towards God and towards people. We wanted them to be accepting and loving towards people who are different than them, different race, color, background, political party. We wanted them to be generous givers who put God's kingdom first. We wanted them to be willing to sacrifice. We wanted them to be affectionate and loving with their parents. We wanted them to be outward focused. Since we decided we wanted that harvest, we planted intentional seeds toward those goals. From the very beginning, we parented and developed practices that led towards that specific harvest. We weren't just accidentally doing stuff. All too often, you don't think that way. You look at the short term. You're trying to survive the terrible twos, or you're trying to make it till they sleep the whole night. Sometimes it seems the first few years are more about our egos than about our kids' development. We're more worried about what other people think about our kids and how it reflects on us than we are about just planting right things in our kids. It is never too early to start planting right values in your children. Farming would be easy if all you had to do was plant the seeds and then watch TV until harvest time. Instead, it's long, hard work. A farmer has to make sure the plant gets enough water, make sure the plant gets the right kind of nutrients, fight weeds, fight infection and disease, keep predators out of the field. It's not a vacation between planting and harvest. It's a lot of work with no immediate payoff. Just like my bean seed in the styrofoam cup, your good seeds are hard at work. Just because you can't see the results yet doesn't mean nothing's happening. Be patient, commit, do the work. If you don't do the work, you lose the harvest. What you neglect after planting dies. So after you plant the right things in your family, fight to keep the right things growing. It's a battle. Jesus told us that would happen. Jesus said the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. Satan wants to destroy your harvest. He wants to tear down your marriage. He wants to rob your children of their potential. It is a war to keep things growing and the wrong things away. If you neglect the seed, it dies. The family is under attack in America. And so we got to fight for our families, and we got to fight for what's right, and we got to fight for the right values. It's not enough to just sit back and say, well, I sure hope something turns out good. It's not enough to plant a value once. Cindy and I couldn't plant and model generosity with our boys one time. It was a continual, everyday, ongoing, intentional process. Sometimes planting is tiring, but harvest time is wonderful. And can I tell you right now, with our sons, we are enjoying harvest time. We didn't always enjoy planting, but what a joy it is now to walk alongside them and watch them do ministry and watch them become everything that God wanted them to be and we hoped they could be. It is a great joy. Harvest time is great. Another principle. If you're having problems with the planting, ask for help. If something's going wrong with a crop, a wise farmer hires a crop consultant, somebody with a PhD who knows more than he does. He doesn't say, well, I'm a farmer, I know what I'm doing, I'll figure it out. He doesn't wait until he loses the harvest. When it isn't going right, he quickly asks for help. In your marriage and in your family, when something isn't working right, ask for help. I don't understand why people wait until there's a crisis to ask. Well, actually, I do understand. It's pride. They don't want anyone to think that they're struggling, that they have problems, that they don't know everything, that they need help. That's foolish. Don't wait for failure before you ask for help. At every stage, you need help. You need advice from someone who's been there and knows more than you. Why would you act like you know how to raise an infant if you've never had one? New moms feel so much pressure to do it all right. You've never done that before. How would you have a clue? Ask for help. Don't ask me. I don't understand infants. Ask somebody smart. Why would you even pretend that you understand middle school girls? Ask for help. I don't know who to tell you to ask, but ask. You've never been married before. We don't expect you to know everything. There are going to be challenges you didn't anticipate and problems you don't understand. Ask for help. Maybe you've been married before and it didn't work out. Why would you bring the same unhealthy approach and habits to a new relationship and think something different was going to happen? Ask for help. Don't wait until it crashes. Please don't wait for a crisis. Ask for help at the first sign of struggle. Ask for help when you're facing a new stage of life. Ask for help. The absolute best in our church at this, Michael and Becca Winslow. Early in their marriage, when they were both busy working, they came and asked for help. They said, we don't feel like we're moving forward. How can we stay connected and strong? Before their first child was born, they asked for help. What do we need to be thinking about? How is this going to affect our marriage? How do we prepare ourselves for this next stage? When they were trying to make the decision about whether Becca would keep working, they asked for help. When Layla was an infant and Becca was going nuts with a baby who needed her every moment, one afternoon she showed up at my office. She came in crying. She put Layla down in the middle of the floor and said, Pastor Rod, how do I keep my sanity? Help. And Cindy and I sat on the floor with her and talked her through it. When Michael was struggling to find the way to make the transition between home and work each evening, he asked for help. Now that Layla's a teenager and Nate will be one before long, you better believe they still ask for help. Now, do you think less of Michael and Becca because they asked for help? No, you think more of them because they ask for help before a problem becomes a crisis. They're smart. They don't pretend like they know everything. One more principle. If you're not happy with your current harvest, plant something different. If you don't like beans, you'd be a fool to plant them again. If you don't like that strain of corn, plant something different. Some of you are discouraged looking at your marriage or your kids. You're not happy with your current harvest. If that's you, time to plant something different. Don't blame others. That's a trap. Too many people want to blame their background or their parents and what they did or what they don't have, or the society around them, or the president, rather than take responsibility for the current harvest in their own family. What you planted grew, so now start planting different things. Figure out the harvest you want and get planting. It is never too late to start planting right things. You say, well, I've been trying 3 months. I've been planting good seeds. Nothing's happening. It might take longer than 3 months. Well, we've been trying for weeks, but we don't see any change in our children. It might take longer. Harvest time is not immediate. Farmers don't plant corn on Monday and harvest corn on Tuesday. It's a process that takes time, and too many people quit too soon. They give up on the seed before the harvest. You say, well, how long do I wait? How long is this going to take? When is my kid going to be wonderful? I don't know. And I've met your kid. Harvest time is not immediate. But listen to me, harvest time does come. Don't give up. Keep planting. Some of you have adult kids who are far from God. You planted right seeds. Harvest will come.